After 7 years by Ethan Sinclair's side, I had mastered the art of hiding my emotions. After a night of passion, Ethan casually said, "I'm getting engaged next month." I swallowed the bitter lump in my throat and forced a breezy smile. "Oh, that's great. Coincidentally, I'm getting married too." Ethan's smile turned icy. "Do you honestly think you can find a better man than me?" He thought I was joking, but when I officially announced my wedding, he completely lost his mind. I had been with Ethan for 7 years. Over those 7 years, we became so in sync we felt like real lovers. But we weren't. I was Ethan's executive assistant by day, and his secret, hidden lover by night. Nobody knew about our relationship. And of course, nobody knew just how wild and possessive the brilliant, cold CEO of Sinclair Enterprises could be behind closed doors. Right now, I was bending over to organize some files on his desk. Ethan wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, pulling me flush against his chest. His hot kisses trailed down my neck, sending shivers down my spine. I turned around, standing on my tiptoes to kiss him back. Looking at his handsome, chiseled face and dark, bottomless eyes, I comforted myself. Even without a title, staying with a man like this wasn't a bad deal. But even though our bodies were tangled together, there was always an invisible distance between us. He was right there, yet he felt like sand slipping through my fingers. I always knew Ethan and I belonged to different worlds. But after being together for so long, even a heart of stone would melt. I cared about him. I kept lying to myself, hoping I could stay by his side forever. I wondered if 7 years could turn into a lifetime. But every sweet dream has an expiration date. Late at night, the balcony was bathed in dim light. I walked over quietly holding his bathrobe, wanting to remind him not to catch a cold since he had just recovered. But as I drew closer, I heard his voice. He was on the phone with his family, talking about how little I meant to him. "Chloe is just convenient. I'm used to her, so I don't want to replace her. She's been with me since college. She's as clean as a blank sheet of paper. Isn't that perfect for someone with my standards, unlike those wild girls in our social circle? Don't worry, I'll be back for the engagement next month. Chloe is obedient. She won't make a scene." I thought I could handle it. But hearing those words still made my heart ache intensely. I walked into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. Long, straight black hair. No makeup. Submissive. Obedient. I was exactly what he wanted me to be. But I wasn't who I wanted to be. It was time. Let today be the final day of our 7 years. The night before his business trip, I went back to his penthouse to pack his bags. For 7 years, I had always packed for his trips. I was used to it, and so was he. I took his shirts and suits from the closet and organized his stomach medicine into a travel pillbox. I couldn't help but nag him. "Leo is going with you this time, so I'll stay behind. By the way, I finalized the details on the Dynatech contract. Tell Leo to bring the file tomorrow morning, so you can sign it directly." Ethan chuckled, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "My little manager. I'm realizing I really can't live without you." I patted his hand, gently slipped away, and continued packing. Once everything was done, I took a soft breath. All set. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure you don't want to come? The hotel has a private hot spring. We can relax together after the meetings." A hint of desire flickered in his dark, usually cold eyes. I kept my eyes down and smiled. "No thanks. Let Leo go." I stepped forward to loosen his tie. Everything felt normal. Yet everything had changed. "What's wrong with you tonight?" I looked up into his eyes. "Ethan, we've been together for 7 years." Ethan's lips curved into a smirk. He patted his thigh, signaling me to sit. I didn't move. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his lap. "Are you mad because I forgot our anniversary?" As soon as he spoke, I felt a cold touch on my collarbone. He had clasped a stunning, diamond-encrusted star necklace around my neck. Ethan kissed my earlobe, his hands sliding down my hips. "Do you like it? I bought it at an auction in London last week. It looks great against your fair skin. So, can I touch you now?" He pushed me down onto the sofa. At that moment, he probably thought a luxurious, expensive gift could buy my eternal devotion. Love. He didn't have any, and in his eyes, I didn't need it anyway. But he was wrong. I was done living a life where I felt like an afterthought. "Ethan, let's break up." Ethan frowned, his handsome brow furrowing. "Do you even know what you're saying?" I turned and looked him dead in the eye. "I'm 28. I'm not young anymore. I want to go back home, find a nice man and get married." Ethan let go of me. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it. Through the swirling gray smoke, his face looked incredibly cold. When he finished, he crushed the cigarette butt and stood up. "Chloe, do you know what happens when you cross the line? I can let this little tantrum slide once, but never twice." "I know." Ethan gave me a mocking look. "Fine. If you want to break up, let's break up. Coincidentally, I'm getting engaged next month anyway." I forced a smile. "Oh, then let me congratulate you in advance." His eyes were freezing cold. But I had made my choice, and I wouldn't look back. As he grabbed his coat and turned to leave, I called out to him. Ethan looked back over his shoulder. Chloe, if you take back what you said before I walk out that door, I'll pretend this never happened. He thought I was just throwing a tantrum, but I wasn't. I carefully took off the diamond necklace and placed it in his palm. I won't be needing this. And don't worry, Mr. Sinclair. Once you walk out that door, I will never bother you again. Ethan clenched his fist tightly. He didn't look back. Instead, he threw the necklace into the trash can and slammed the door behind him. The moment he left, my composure crumbled. Tears streamed down my face. It felt like a giant hole had been carved out of my chest. The pain was excruciating. I knew that if I hadn't made a scene tonight, I could have kept living here. We could have kept this arrangement going. Sweet, warm, but ultimately hollow. Because Ethan was going to get married. And I refused to be his mistress or destroy another woman's family. It had to end. Since I had decided to walk away, I wasn't going to drag things out. That night, I packed my few belongings and wrote my resignation letter. The next morning, I handed it in. Since my role was specifically dedicated to assisting Ethan, there wasn't much to hand over. Because Leo was still away on the business trip with Ethan, I just sent Leo a long, detailed handoff email on WhatsApp. Leo didn't reply, probably because he was busy in meetings. It didn't matter anymore. I went back to my desk and packed up my personal items. My co-workers were shocked that I was resigning. After all, I had been working for the notorious devil boss for 7 years, and I was the only one who could tolerate his temper. Chloe, are you really leaving? I smiled and nodded. If you leave and the boss throws a fit, the entire assistant pool is going to suffer. But why? Sinclair Enterprises offers the best pay in the industry. You won't find a better package elsewhere. I gave them the honest truth. I'm getting older. After grinding for so many years, I just want to settle down, marry a nice guy, and focus on family. I said my goodbyes, held my cardboard box, and took the elevator down. In the lobby, I bumped right into a very pissed off Ethan and a terrified Leo. I gave a polite, professional nod. Goodbye. Leo looked at me with deep regret. Chloe, do you really have to go? Can't you reconsider? Ethan cast a cold, indifferent glance at me. I gave a firm, polite smile. No, thank you. Ethan let out a cold snort and walked straight into the private elevator. Leo hurried after him. After leaving Sinclair Enterprises, I went back to my hometown. It wasn't a massive metropolis like New York, but it was a beautiful, thriving college town. Thanks to Ethan, during those 7 years of working all day and catering to him at night, I had saved up a hefty sum of money. While I wasn't filthy rich, I had more than enough. Even with my mother's medical bills, I was financially secure. Before, I lived to work. Now, I wanted to actually live. I took a teaching and research position at my alma mater. My old advisor had reached out to me a while back, asking if I wanted to join his research project. I was too busy being Ethan's assistant back then, but now, I could fully commit to it. My new life became a peaceful routine. Home campus lab. I was so busy I barely had time to think about Ethan. By mid-autumn, the department organized a faculty social event. Essentially a mixer for the unmarried staff to mingle. We met at an upscale lounge downtown. My colleague from the department nudged me with her elbow. Chloe, aren't you single? You should keep your eyes open tonight. Yeah, a gorgeous girl like you deserves the best. Before she could finish, the crowd started whispering excitedly, Professor Vance is here. Oh wow, the competition is going to be fierce tonight. Julian Vance is a total catch, handsome, wealthy, and already a rising star in academia. My colleague pushed me forward. Chloe, go get him. I looked up at the man walking toward us. Wait, wasn't that Julian, the boy next door from my childhood? I remembered Julian had gone to an Ivy League school, and then vanished from my social circle after we lost touch. An old friend. A reunion. Julian was just as warm and gentle as he used to be. Chloe, it's been a long time. Julian, long time no see. Our colleagues immediately started teasing us. Childhood sweethearts? What kind of fairy tale is this? Quiche. Quiche. Chloe, if you miss out on a guy like this, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Go for it. The girls playfully pushed me toward Julian. Tipsy from the wine, my foot slipped, and I stumbled. Alcohol always gets in the way. Julian gentlemanly reached out to steady me, but someone else beat him to it, gripping my arm with bruising force. Ouch! I looked up dazed, meeting a gaze cold enough to kill. Julian tried to pry me away from the man's grip, but the intruder had absolutely no intention of letting go. Who are you? Let her go. Ethan. I stared at him in confusion. For a second, it felt like we were back in our private bubble, with only him and me. Ethan was flanked by a group of wealthy elites. Anyone could see he was someone powerful, and not to be messed with. Ethan pulled me toward the exit. She's drunk. I'm taking her home. At that moment, a pathetic part of me wanted to go with him, but I couldn't. Swallowing my tears, I slowly pried his fingers off my arm. I turned and wrapped my arm around Julian's, smiling brightly. No need to trouble yourself, Mr. Sinclair. I already have a ride. Ethan's face darkened like a storm. He turned and walked into a private VIP room. Once he was gone, everyone finally let out a breath and began to gossip. Oh my God, was that Ethan Sinclair, the billionaire heir? Chloe, you know Ethan Sinclair? Are you guys close? My colleague whispered curiously. I used to work at Sinclair Enterprises. I was his assistant. Everyone looked shocked. Wow, he looks so intimidating. You're amazing for surviving working under him. Seriously, rumor has it he has a terrible temper. Oh, by the way, I heard some gossip about him. Apparently, he has a childhood sweetheart who went abroad, some sort of first love. He hasn't gotten married all these years because he was waiting for her, and she's supposedly coming back soon. But didn't the paparazzi snap photos of him with some mystery woman before? Well, billionaires keep their flings separate from their marriages. They only marry social peers. The women on the side are just toys they throw away. Right, Chloe? As his former assistant, you must know a lot, right? I lowered my eyes, a bitter taste in my mouth. To Ethan, I was a secret lover, an employee, but never a partner or a wife. I used to be like a moth drawn to a flame, but now the fire was out. It was over. The party ended late. Julian drove me back and, worried about my safety, insisted on walking me to my door. Thanks, Julian. It's late, so I won't invite you in for tea, but next time for sure. Julian smiled and waved. Don't be so polite with me. Get some rest. Call me if you need anything. I will. Once Julian left, I slumped against the door, completely exhausted. I thought I could remain unfazed when seeing Ethan again, but after all this time, I still couldn't. The feeling of being controlled by my emotions made me feel suffocated and helpless. I decided to take a hot shower to wash away the day's stress. Just then, the doorbell rang. Was Julian still here? I opened the door without thinking, only to be pulled into a burning, rock-hard embrace. I instinctively struggled. The smell of rain, expensive tobacco, and vintage scotch flooded my senses. Before I could even process the shadow looming over me, Ethan's arms locked around my waist like iron bands. He slammed the front door, shut behind him with his foot, pinning me against the entryway wall. His chest was heaving, his tie loosened, his dark eyes burning with a terrifying, chaotic storm. Who was that man? He rasped, his voice rough, dripping with a dark, suffocating possessiveness. The boy next door? Is that who you traded me for? Chloe. Ethan, let go of me. I gasped, twisting my shoulders, digging my nails into his forearms. You're drunk. Get out of my house. Answer me. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing against my temple, his hot breath searing my skin. 7 years, Chloe. 7 years you slept in my bed, wore the clothes I bought you, knew every inch of my body. And you think you can just smile at another man 3 months after walking away? A cold, bitter anger ignited in my gut, burning away the last lingering thread of hesitation. I didn't trade you for anyone, Ethan, I said, my voice dropping into an icy, steady register. I threw you in the trash. There's a difference. Ethan flinched as if I had slapped him across the face. His grip on my waist loosened for a fraction of a second, and I used every ounce of my strength to shove him back. He stumbled against the small shoe rack, knocking over a vase of dried lavender. The glass shattered against the floorboards, the sharp sound echoing through the quiet apartment. Get out. I pointed at the door, my chest rising and falling heavily. Or I call the police. Ethan stood in the dim light of my hallway, his tailored coat rumpled, his hair messy. The untouchable king of Sinclair Enterprises looked like a desperate wild animal cornered in a trap of his own making. He let out a harsh, self-deprecating laugh. The police? You're going to call the cops on me, Chloe? After everything we've been to each other? We are nothing to each other, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket and tapping the screen. You are getting engaged next month. You have a high society fiancé waiting for you in New York. You told your family I was just a convenient, clean piece of paper. Did you forget those words, Mr. Sinclair? Because I didn't. Ethan's face went pale under the hallway light. The arrogance in his eyes flickered, replaced by a sudden, jarring flash of panic. You heard that, he stammered, stepping toward me, his hands raised in an almost pleading gesture. The phone call on the balcony? Every word, I said coldly. So don't stand here acting like a heartbroken Loa. It makes me sick. Ethan stopped 3 feet away from me. For the first time in 7 years, I saw genuine, unadulterated fear in his eyes. The man who had never apologized to anyone in his life swallowed hard, his jaw working as if he were trying to swallow glass. Chloe. It wasn't like that, he whispered, his voice cracking. My grandfather. The board. They were pressuring me about the marriage alliance. I had to say those things to shut them up. I didn't mean It doesn't matter whether you meant it or not, Ethan, I interrupted, staring him straight in the eye. What matters is that I finally woke up. I spent 7 years being your dirty little secret. I hid in the shadows while you played the bachelor in public. I ruined my own youth believing that if I was obedient enough, you might one day see me as a human being. I took a step forward, forcing him to step back toward the door. Now leave, before I lose whatever tiny shred of respect I have left for my 21-year-old self who loved you. Ethan stared at me, his chest heaving. He opened his mouth to speak, but the dead, absolute indifference in my eyes seemed to choke the words right out of his throat. Slowly, agonizingly, he backed out the door. The moment the lock clicked shut, I sank against the wall, my knees giving out. I buried my face in my hands, letting the silent, heavy tears finally fall. The next morning, the sun broke through the autumn clouds, casting bright, warm light across the university campus. I spent 2 hours cleaning up the broken glass in my hallway, threw away the ruined lavender, and put on a crisp navy blue blouse and dark trousers for work. I applied a thin layer of concealer to hide the dark circles beneath my eyes. When I arrived at the research lab, Professor Miller, my old advisor, was standing near the main whiteboard, looking flustered alongside 2 university vice-chancellors. "Chloe, you're here," Professor Miller called out, waving me over frantically. Good. Come meet our new primary sponsor." My heart did a sickening drop. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the courtyard was a man in a bespoke charcoal gray suit. He turned around slowly, holding a cup of artisanal coffee. Ethan. He looked pristine, impeccably groomed, and completely devoid of the chaotic desperation he had displayed in my hallway 8 hours ago. He looked every bit the billionaire titan holding the fate of lesser mortals in his palm. "Miss Brooks," Ethan said, his voice smooth, professional, and entirely detached. "A pleasure to see you again." I clamped my jaw shut, keeping my expression entirely neutral. "Mr. Sinclair." I didn't realize Sinclair Enterprises had an interest in regional botanical pharmacology. "Sinclair Enterprises invests in excellence, Miss Brooks," Ethan replied, taking a slow sip of his coffee. When I heard Professor Miller's department was short $3 million on their cellular preservation trials, I felt compelled to step in. Professor Miller beamed. "It's a miracle, Chloe. $3 million in unrestricted research grants. And Mr. Sinclair has only one small condition." I looked at Ethan, my eyes narrowing. "And what condition is that?" "I want Miss Brooks appointed as the Chief Administrative Coordinator for the grant," Ethan said, looking directly into my eyes with an unreadable glaze. "I need someone I know is capable of managing the budget and oversight. After all, she was my head assistant for 7 years." The Vice-Chancellor laughed warmly. "What a wonderful coincidence. Chloe, this is a massive career opportunity for you. You'll be liaising directly with Mr. Sinclair's executive team." They thought it was a blessing. I knew it was a leash. He couldn't force me back into his bed, so he was using his billions to buy his way into my workplace, trapping me in an official contract where I would be forced to report to him every single week. "I respectfully decline," I said smoothly. The room fell dead silent. Professor Miller gasped. "Chloe, what are you talking about?" "I am a research assistant, Professor," I said, keeping my tone light and professional. "My focus is on molecular analysis, not administrative budget management. I believe Dr. Vance would be far better suited for the coordination role." Right on cue, the lab door pushed open. Julian walked in holding a stack of lab reports, wearing a simple corduroy jacket and glasses. He paused, noticing the heavy tension in the room. "Is everything all right?" Julian asked, his eyes sweeping across the room before landing protectively on me. Ethan's posture instantly hardened. His eyes locked onto Julian, a freezing wave of hostility radiating from him so intensely that even the Vice-Chancellor took an involuntary step back. "Dr. Vance," Ethan said, his voice dropping into a dangerous, low rumble. We're just discussing the $3 million grant I am providing to this laboratory." Julian set his files down on the desk, stepped right beside me, and looked at Ethan without a single trace of fear. "We appreciate the offer, Mr. Sinclair," Julian said calmly, his tone warm but firm. "However, our laboratory has already secured primary funding through the National Science Foundation's regional allocation. We are not in need of private corporate oversight." Ethan let out a cold, mocking sneer. "The NSF grant is $200,000 over 3 years, Dr. Vance. My check is $3 million cleared today. Don't let your personal ego destroy your department's future." "It's not about ego, Mr. Sinclair," Julian replied, looking Ethan straight in the eye. "It's about autonomy. In academia, as in life, some things simply aren't for sale." Ethan's eyes flared with pure, murderous rage. For a second, I thought he was going to order his security guards to drag Julian out of the building. Before the argument could escalate, I stepped between them, holding an official clipboard. Mr. Sinclair, I said coldly, if you wish to submit a formal grant proposal, please route it through the university's corporate partnerships office. We have experiments to run. Ethan stared down at me. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words, ancient grievances, and 7 years of hidden history. Finally, Ethan reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a thick, ivory-embossed envelope with gold leaf trim, and set it on my clipboard. I came here today to deliver this personally, Chloe, he murmured, his voice so quiet only I could hear it. I looked down at the gold lettering on the heavy paper. The Sinclair and Montgomery families cordially invite you to celebrate the engagement of Ethan Sinclair and Veronica Montgomery. The date was set for 2 weeks from today at the St. Regis Ballroom in New York. Consider it a token of my appreciation for your 7 years of service, Ethan said, his voice laced with a bitter, venomous edge. I expect my former executive assistant to attend. Unless, of course, you're too coward to watch me move on. He thought this would break me. He thought presenting his high society marriage to a billionaire heiress would force me to realize what I had lost, driving me back to his feet in tears. He still didn't understand. I picked up the ivory envelope, looked up into his dark, expectant eyes and smiled, a genuine, radiant, utterly unbothered smile. Thank you, Mr. Sinclair, I said smoothly. I wouldn't miss it for the world. In fact, let me give you a gift in return. I reached into my bag, pulled out a simple printed card from the university printer, and handed it to him. It was an announcement for the university's Autumn Faculty Gala, a traditional event where staff members formally introduce their partners to the academic community. On the bottom line, written in my neat handwriting, was, guests, Dr. Julian Vance and Miss Chloe Brooks. Julian and I are making our official public debut that same weekend, I said, my tone as light as a summer breeze. Congratulations to us both. Ethan stared at the card in his hand. The color drained from his face so fast he looked as though he had been struck by lightning. He looked from the card, to me, and finally to Julian, whose hand was now resting comfortably and possessively over the small of my back. Ethan's fingers clamped around the card, crushing the heavy paper into a mangled ball inside his fist. Without a single word, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the laboratory, slamming the heavy glass door so hard the frame rattled. The news of Ethan Sinclair's impending engagement swept through national financial news like wildfire over the next 10 days. Sinclair Enterprises meets Montgomery Global, the merger of the century. Ethan Sinclair set to marry heiress Veronica Montgomery, Indiana, New York Gala. Every time I turned on the news or scrolled through social media, his face was everywhere. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tailored tuxedos, standing beside Veronica Montgomery, a poised, icy blonde with an old money pedigree that matched his perfectly. Yet, behind the glittering headlines, my old contacts from the executive floor at Sinclair Enterprises were texting me frantic updates. Leo, Chloe, please, the boss is losing his mind. He's fired 3 vice presidents this week. Leo, he hasn't slept in 4 days. He keeps calling your old desk extension at 2 a.m. Leo, he found the old coffee mug you left in the break room and threatened to fire the janitor for trying to wash it. I read the messages quietly while sitting in the university library, then cleared the chat history. I didn't care. Over the past 2 weeks, my life had filled with warmth and quiet purpose. Julian and I spent our evenings walking through the campus gardens, grading student papers and cooking simple dinners at his house. Julian never rushed me. He didn't demand physical intimacy, nor did he demand that I explain my 7 years with Ethan. He simply offered a steady, unshakable presence. A man who held the door open, remembered my favorite tea, and looked at me as if I were the most brilliant, precious creature on earth. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. On the Thursday before the New York Gala, I was leaving the research building at 8 p.m. when a black Maybach pulled up to the curb. The rear door swung open. Ethan stepped out. He looked unrecognizable. His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot and sunken, dark purple bruises of exhaustion beneath them. His suit coat was missing, his tie hanging loose around his collar, smelling heavily of stale bourbon. He blocked my path on the quiet, tree-lined sidewalk. Chloe, he choked out, his voice hoarse, sounding like a man who hadn't spoken in days. Please. I stopped, holding my leather tote bag tight against my hip. Mr. Sinclair, shouldn't you be on a private jet to New York right now? Your engagement rehearsal is tomorrow. Ethan took 2 unsteady steps toward me. He reached out a shaking hand, his fingers hovering inches from my cheek, afraid to touch me. I canceled it, he whispered. I froze. What? I canceled the engagement, Ethan repeated. tears suddenly welling in his dark, bloodshot eyes spilling over his lashes without shame. I told the board to go to hell. I told Veronica to take her family shares and burn them. I don't care about the merger. I don't care about the company. He dropped to his knees right there on the wet cobblestones of the university path. The arrogant, untouchable billionaire heir to Sinclair Enterprises was kneeling in the rain at my feet, clutching the hem of my coat with white-knuckled desperation. Chloe, please. He sobbed, his head bowed against my knees, his entire body shaking violently. Come back to me. I'll give you everything. I'll marry you. Tomorrow. We'll hold the biggest wedding New York has ever seen. I'll put your name on the house, on the company, on everything I own. He looked up at me, his face ruined by tears, his eyes begging for mercy. Just don't look at him the way you used to look at me. Please, Chloe. I'm dying without you. The rain began to fall harder, tapping rhythmically against the autumn leaves. Above us. I looked down at the man kneeling in the dirt. 7 years. 7 years I had prayed for this exact moment. I had laid awake in his cold penthouse bedroom, weeping into the pillows, praying to whatever God was listening to make Ethan look at me with love, to hear him offer me a ring, a title, a home. If he had offered me a simple silver band 3 years ago, I would have thrown myself into his arms and given him my soul. Now he was offering me a multi-billion-dollar empire on his knees. And I felt nothing. No victory. No petty satisfaction. No surge of romantic nostalgia. Only a vast, quiet, beautiful void of absolute indifference. Get up, Ethan, I said softly, my voice completely steady against the sound of the rain. Chloe, please say yes. He whimpered, grabbing my hands, pressing them against his wet, feverish cheek. Tell me you still love me. You loved me for 7 years. You can't just stop. I did love you for 7 years, Ethan, I said gently, firmly pulling my hands out of his grip. I loved you so much that I let you strip away my self-respect, my ambition, and my pride. I let you turn me into a shadow. I stepped back, pulling my coat away from his fingers. But love isn't a bank account you can overdraw forever without consequences. You spent 7 years spending every drop of devotion I had for you while offering nothing in return. I was stupid. I was arrogant. Ethan cried out, beating his fist against his own chest in sheer agony. I thought you'd always be there. I thought you were mine. I was yours, I whispered, looking into his weeping, ruined face. Until the night you told your family I was just a convenient piece of paper. That was the night the girl who loved you died. I turned my head toward the end of the path. Julian was walking toward us, holding a wide black umbrella, his posture calm and unhurried. He didn't yell at Ethan, nor did he try to make a dramatic scene. He simply walked up, opened the umbrella over my head, and held out his arm for me. I took Julian's arm, leaning my shoulder comfortably against his. Ethan sat in the dirt, watching us under the streetlights, his breath catching in his throat as he saw the effortless, deep, unspoken trust between Chloe and the man beside her. Goodbye, Ethan, I said, looking back over my shoulder one last time. I hope you find peace. We walked down the path, our shadows merging together under the warm glow of the campus lanterns. Behind us, in the dark, pouring rain, Ethan let out a gut-wrenching, animalistic scream of pure, absolute loss that echoed into the night until the wind swallowed it whole. 2 weeks later, the grand ballroom of the University Alumni Hall was ablaze with crystal chandeliers, floral arrangements, and classical string music. It was the annual Autumn Faculty Gala. I wore a floor-length emerald green silk gown that draped gracefully over my frame, my black hair styled in elegant waves, a subtle touch of makeup highlighting my high cheekbones. Beside me stood Julian in a tailored black tuxedo, looking remarkably handsome as he introduced me to the department heads and visiting scholars. Chloe, your research paper on cellular extraction was cited in the New England Journal this morning. The dean beamed, clinking his champagne glass against me. We are so proud to have you on our permanent faculty track. Thank you, Dean. I smiled warmly, taking a small sip of sparkling water. Across the room, the double oak doors swung open. A sudden hush fell over the crowd near the entrance. A man stepped into the ballroom. It was Ethan. He wore a dark blue tuxedo, looking pale, thin, and strikingly quiet. He didn't carry his usual entourage of security guards or business executives. He walked alone, holding a long, narrow mahogany velvet box in his hand. He didn't look at the university presidents, the local politicians, or the cameras. His eyes swept across the crowded room until they locked directly onto me. Julian shifted slightly, but I placed a reassuring hand on his forearm, giving him a quiet nod. I've got this, I whispered. Ethan walked down the central aisle of the ballroom, every eye in the hall following his footsteps. He stopped 3 feet away from Julian and me. He looked at my emerald dress, my glowing skin, the quiet authority and happiness radiating from my posture. A radiance he had never allowed me to express during the 7 years I hid in his shadow. Chloe, Ethan said softly, his voice devoid of all former arrogance. Mr. Sinclair, I replied politely. Ethan opened the mahogany velvet box. Inside sat a legal document and a silver key. This is the deed to the Sinclair estate in the Hamptons, Ethan said, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. And 50% of my personal equity, shares in Sinclair International, transferred into a private trust under your name. The surrounding faculty members gasped softly in utter shock. It's not a bribe, Chloe, Ethan whispered, his eyes filled with a terrifying, absolute sincerity. It's restitution. For the 7 years I stole from you. Whether you ever speak to me again or not, it's yours. I looked at the multi-million-dollar deed. I looked at the silver key. Then I closed the mahogany box with a soft, decisive snap. I pushed the box gently back toward his chest. Keep it, Ethan, I said, my voice calm, clear, and perfectly unbothered. I don't need your money to compensate for my past. My 7 years weren't a waste, they were a lesson. They taught me exactly what I don't want in a partner. Ethan flinched, his lips trembling slightly. And what is it you want, Chloe? He asked, his voice barely audible. I turned my head, looked up into Julian's gentle, warm eyes, and felt his fingers weave firmly through mine. I want a man who isn't ashamed to hold my hand in the sunlight, I said, turning back to face Ethan. I want a home where I am a priority, not an option. And most importantly, I want a future that has nothing to do with you. Ethan stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom, holding the heavy wooden box against his chest. He looked at our joined hands. He looked at the quiet, absolute finality in my eyes. The realization hit him like a physical blow, shattering the last remaining shred of his denial. There was no secret test, no revenge plot, no hidden lingering desire waiting to be reignited. She was truly, completely, and permanently gone. Ethan slowly bowed his head. A single tear rolled down his pale cheek, falling onto the velvet box. I understand, he whispered. He turned on his heel and walked out of the ballroom, his tall, lonely silhouette disappearing into the dark corridor outside, leaving behind the light, the music, and the woman he would haunt himself over for the rest of his life. 1 year later, the summer sun burned bright and clear over the coastal cliffs of Maine. A small, intimate white tent was set up on the green lawn overlooking the sparkling blue ocean. Wild roses and hydrangeas scented the warm breeze. Inside the bridal suite, I stood in front of the mirror wearing a simple, breathtaking A-line lace wedding dress. My hair was styled with fresh white blossoms, my skin flushed with a healthy, radiant glow. My mother stepped into the room, tears welling in her eyes as she adjusted my veil. You look beautiful, my sweet girl. Thanks, Mom, I smiled, wrapping my arms around her. Outside, the soft notes of a cello began to play. I took a deep breath, picked up my bouquet of white peonies and stepped out onto the sunlit lawn. Sitting on the wooden chairs were our closest friends, colleagues from the university, and my family. And standing at the end of the altar under a floral archway was Julian. He wore a sharp navy suit, his glasses catching the golden sunlight, looking at me as I walked down the aisle with an expression of such pure, overwhelming love that tears pricked the corners of my eyes. When I reached his side, he took my hands in his palms warm, steady, and solid. You are breathtaking, Chloe, he whispered softly into the breeze. So are you, Professor Vance, I teased gently, my heart fluttering with absolute peace. The minister read the vows, but I barely heard the formal words. All I saw were Julian's clear, honest eyes promising me a lifetime of respect, laughter, partnership, and unconditional love. With this ring I thee wed, Julian said, sliding a delicate platinum band set with a small, brilliant diamond onto my left ring finger. I slid a matching band onto his finger. I pronounce you husband and wife, the minister announced warmly. You may kiss the bride. Julian wrapped his arms gently around my waist, pulling me close and pressed his lips to mine in a long, sweet, passionate kiss that tasted of sea salt and forever. The crowd erupted into joyful applause and cheers as we walked back up the aisle together, hand in hand, surrounded by flying flower petals and happy laughter. My eyes briefly drifted toward the high wooden fence near the edge of the coastal cliff. Standing far back in the shadows of the pine trees, completely hidden from the wedding guests, was a solitary black car. Inside the rear window, a man sat motionless in the dark, watching the radiant bride in her white dress through a pair of binoculars. Ethan sat alone in the quiet car, his fingers clutching a worn, faded photograph of a 21-year-old girl with long straight hair who used to pack his medicine boxes and wait up for him until dawn. He watched the woman he had discarded walk into her new life, leaning her head against her husband's shoulder, laughing brightly under the brilliant Maine sun. He closed his eyes, pressed the photograph against his heart, and wept into the empty silence of his luxury car, trapped forever in a prison built by his own arrogance. I didn't pause my step. I didn't look back. I squeezed Julian's hand tighter, took a deep breath of the clean ocean air, and walked forward into the bright, beautiful light of my own story.